Welcome to PGS Reviews. I'm your host, Rrr Mmmm. PGS Reviews was created for PGS members to present their work and review entertainment that stirs the imagination. Today is our very first show, and I'm delighted to feature Steve Foley of the Phantasmagorium Show and his new book, Let's All Go to the Lobby.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
A sweet history of concessions in the movies. I didn't say the whole thing. So the book is called Let's All Go to the Lobby, A Sweet History of Concessions at the Movies. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for having me on their first show. I'm honored.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And I got so excited when I found out about this book. And, you know, of course, I immediately read it when I heard that it was available on Amazon, which it is right now.
It is.
And I wanted to go to the concession stand and get some treats, but I didn't have to because this book was a treat all on its own.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. So before we get started, I did bring a trailer. Can I play the trailer?
Yes, please.
Awesome. So this is the trailer for the book, and I hope you enjoy it.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. I just love that.
Cool.
It's fantastic. I think that this is such a wonderful idea and an amazing thing that you've accomplished. And I just want to know, Steve, what is the mindset behind writing this book?
Well, I was thinking about, actually, I was watching John Campia's documentary. It's, you know, movie trailers, a love story. And he's that kind of sparked the idea. The fact that he, you know, when he went to research doing the documentary, he found that there wasn't a lot of books about movie trailers, and I thought that was odd, as obviously he did too. And I was thinking, you know what, that's crazy, because I wonder if anybody's written about concessions at the movies, right? Because I mean, it's the biggest thing besides the movie at the movie theater, right? Exactly. Besides the, you know, the palace that you go to,
right?
They create to put you in there. So I started looking around, and sure enough, there just isn't a lot of coverage there, and there is a rich history behind concessions in the movie. I'm not going to spoil too much in this interview because the book is not long. It's 80 pages in the paperback, about half as much, 45 pages on the Kindle. Digital version, both of which are available now on Amazon. We'll put the link in the description so you can check it out and buy, or if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. And then there will be an audio version, I think, out next week. So we'll look for that too, if you prefer to listen to your books, which I have been lately. In the last couple of years, been an audiobook person more than reading. Just don't have the time to read it, I find. But so I started doing the research, and then I started finding this really kind of rich history, and I said, okay, yeah, this is perfect. Let's pull this research together, see if I can, you know, hammer out a book that's, even if it's a pamphlet, you know what I mean? It'll still be kind of a novelty book. And you know, as I started putting it together, it just kind of fell into place, and I'm like, all right, cool, this will work. And, you know, obviously it's self-published. You know, I don't have a ton of money to do this kind of stuff, so I just you know, I found somebody to do the artwork for the cover, and you know, it just that's basically it. The mindset was basically this would be a cool thing to have like in my collection. And I wonder if other people would like it too, or interested at all in the history of concessions at the movies. So that was kind of the mindset going in.
And it's brilliant. Of course, there is
thank you.
people who would love to have this in their libraries or on their phones. And you mentioned the length of the book. I thought it was a perfect length, and it was entertaining from page turn to page turn. So, congratulations on such a great book. I did want to ask you some questions about it.
Okay.
And you mentioned in the book the famous "Let's all go to the lobby" trailer, which is, obviously an inspiration for the title of your book as well. And, I recall seeing that trailer pretty much all my life at one point or another, either at the movie theater or before a movie, and even in several movies. And I'm just kind of curious, do you think, are the younger generations also as familiar with this reel? And if not, is that one of the reasons why you wrote this book?
So obviously it's not a main reason why I wrote the book, but as soon as, kind of dovetailing off of the last question, as soon as I started doing this research, I mean, that's exactly what popped into my head. The jingle, right? The reel. It's amazing. It's iconic. Everybody knows it of a certain age, but to answer the question, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the younger generations have any exposure to it. Right. It's wasn't the driving force behind my decision to do it. I just love the jingle, and I thought it worked perfectly for the book. But when I saw it, I remember mainly I saw it at drive-in theaters when those were a big thing, right? Especially in the late 80s and early 90s when I was going to drive-ins a lot before they kind of went away here. But I think it would, in front of each movie, and there was always a double feature. So you got that a couple of times, every Friday night when you went to the drive-in. So that was my first exposure, I think, was in drive-ins, and then theaters in general, because, it's just always played it, some version of it. And each movie house kind of had there was several versions. So you might get the old version, the black and white version, or you might get the new updated, version. Or so I think some chains even did their own kind of spin on it and changed out, they'll change out a different, Raisinets for Milk Duds or whatever they kind of just change it up a little bit. But it was definitely part of my movie going experience, and I think a lot of us, it's part of our movie going experience. But for the younger generation, I guess the only place you're going to really see that is in on YouTube, because I don't think movie theaters are actually using that anymore. Now I could be wrong. I don't know for a fact, but I'm not sure. I certainly, none of the theaters around where I live in Southern California that I frequent use that reel anymore. It's a bummer. It's a great reel.
It is a great reel, and I think it's worth mentioning because it certainly stirs up a lot of memories, but it does certainly have a place in movie history.
Yes.
And so, has the main idea behind the varying concession offerings, at different venues, like the ballpark versus an opera or even a movie theater, in modern times remain the same as it has, in the past, the different offerings? Is it the same reasons at those different locations, you think, that the mindset of having, let's say, popcorn and not popcorn at certain places, or hot dogs and not hot dogs at others?
Yeah, I think so. And obviously it's going to be, what sells the best at each venue. We talk about a little bit in the book, hot dogs aren't the number one on the list in the movies. It's just kind of a weird food for in the movies, but hot dogs are great at the ballpark. Right. So that's, so that sells well at the ballpark, not so much at the movie theater. It's interesting. I don't want to give away too much, like I said, because it's a short book and I want you to read it because I think you'll like it. What I found really interesting was that popcorn wasn't always welcome in the movie theater.
Right.
In fact, theater owners didn't want popcorn anywhere near their theaters. They built these lavish, expensive, awesome palaces to show movies in. And at the time, they considered popcorn carnival food. They didn't, and first of all, it's too loud, and it was basically paupers ate, the lower class ate popcorn, and they didn't want it anywhere near their movie houses. Movie palaces, which they called it back in the day.
Right.
So I thought that was very interesting. It's something I didn't know. I figured, like probably everybody, that popcorn was just always part of the movie going experience, and it wasn't.
Right.
And we go more into depth in that in the book, and you have to pick up a copy to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a lot in this book, and I enjoyed finding out so much information. And of course, we could talk all night about the book and everything that's in it. And I did also have another question. And I remember my mother talked about going to the movies as a child and how she would spend all day there for like $1. And this was in like the 40s and the 50s. And of course, kids don't do that anymore, and the prices are different. So I just wanted to ask, why do you think that behavior changed? Kids sort of being at the theater all day. And is the idea of spending more money on movies and concessions somehow associated with doing better overall economically?
Oh, good questions. So let's take the first one first. I do think at a certain time in our history, because of how cheap it was easy to send. It's an easy place to send your kids, especially in the summer. Get air conditioned. There's food there. You could pretty much stay all day. Remember, you used to get newsreels. So a lot of people got their news from the movies. Right. If they're the radio, the movies, or the newspaper, and that was it. But you get a lot of news from newsreels. So you could see a newsreel. They used to have just some intermissions. And I see a couple of different flicks. So yes, but obviously as times changed and movies became more of an industry, I think that's when that behavior changed. And I'm sorry, let's go do the second question again, please.
Yeah, what I was saying is, do you, so of course movie prices increased, and, obviously kids couldn't spend the entire day at a theater anymore, but the price of concessions also increased. And I thought maybe that, sort of like that treat of going to the movies and, getting as many treats as you can and going to a movie, kind of like fostered in the idea of just doing much better economically, sort of like in the 50s where, things had changed for the United States so much after World War II. So I kind of think it's interesting because you don't just look at sort of today's history. You're looking at history from almost what, 100 years worth of history.
Pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. And I kind of think, it's very interesting that you did that. So that's certainly anybody who picks up this book is going to just get such a treat because you cover such a large period of time and perhaps some of the most important times in the movie going experience. But
right. Well, and that was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that we covered, the entire history, such as it is, of the concessions at the movies. If you're going to write a book about it, don't do it halfway, right?
Right.
And there's probably a bunch more. It's not like it's not like I had the money to go out and interview experts or anything. This is all just kind of, done, self-published book. I just went and researched, grabbed all the research I could and put a book together. So there's probably some stuff that I missed. I'm not saying it's a comprehensive history. It's what I could find and kind of, relay to an audience about the history of concessions. But I do think, I do. And I think that actually lasted through the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s.
Right.
I think it's in basically when movies became tentpole movies, blockbusters in the 70s. That's when that switch happened, because I mean, and it was still felt in the 80s. Because I was born in 1973, so I was going to the movies, in the late 70s and early 80s, and the most part when I was a kid, and you could still get in to the movie for really cheap. Couple of bucks on the ticket. And as far as I remember, the concessions weren't outrageously priced.
Yeah,
at
they
that
weren't.
time. They were still good. They were still good prices.
Yeah.
So I mean, a $5 bill got you
Yes.
a movie ticket, got you popcorn, a drink, red vines, and absolutely you bit the ends off and stuck the red vine into your soda. That's the only way to drink it, right?
That's correct.
That
yes.
red vines or Twizzlers. I think I used Twizzlers in the book instead of red vines, but you get the gist. It was red vines on the West Coast, at least. Yeah. I always did red vines.
I did both.
Yeah, I was going to use red vines. I should have, but Twizzlers just kind of made more sense at the time when I was writing the book. But yeah, you have to. I mean, if you didn't use a piece of licorice as your straw, you were just doing it wrong.
Agreed. Well, movie theaters have created such an escape for so many of us, and some are quite fancy, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Why do you suppose there was a shift away from that in recent years, as movie theaters seem to look more generic, especially multiplexes? And do you think it's a food-related issue as well in that case?
That's a good question. It's a hard question for me to answer because most of my movie theater going experience has been local. I've been to a couple of theaters in a couple of different states. Louisiana, for instance, was basically, it was weird. It was a weird theater because it was basically a metal prefabricated box, but it was a cool movie theater. Awesome, theater, but the outside didn't look like a movie theater that I've ever seen. Right. So there was a shift in the 90s when the multiplexes got really big. They tried to still give you the palace of old kind of feel on the inside, right? Or maybe a big marquee, neon marquee. Is it food related? I don't think so. I don't. I think it's weird because lately, over the past maybe 10 years, at least here in Southern California, the theater going experience has changed drastically. Obviously, their competition is huge with streamers and video games and you name it, all this home entertainment stuff. So over the past 10 to 20 years, maybe 15 years, the move has been let's try to recreate the home experience or things that you would experience at home here in the theater. So at least here, and probably most of the major markets, you're seeing, the leather reclining chair, automatic leather reclining chairs. You're seeing, and we'll probably get to this in a minute. I know you want to ask me about this. Like waiters and waitresses, bringing your food to you. To your either tables in movie theaters now, where you can sit and dine in, or bring it to your seat. It's very interesting. Also, we're seeing with the evolution of technology, we're seeing that you can now pre-order your concessions. So you can pre-order on an app. They have a special line. You go in, scan your barcode, pick up your food, and go to your seat. For a surcharge in some theaters, a little extra, like a $2 charge, you order online, you go to your seat, and they'll just bring it to you, to your seat, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So they're making it a little bit more convenient because, let's face it, movie theaters don't make money on their tickets. They make money on their concessions. And it's all about getting you in there and then getting you to buy their food. And they do that in several different ways. Once you open the door to a movie theater, they've got you. It's a science. It's from the smells, the popcorn smells right away when you walk in, to the strategic location of the concession stands. They've got your number right when you walk in. So it's up to you, the individual's willpower, whether or not, or how much or how little they can control the spending that happens once they get you in there.
Well, they certainly are doing a good job, and
Yeah.
I do like to see the concession stands. They look good, and they make the food look appealing, and it feels very, they are doing a good job of making you feel like you are treating yourself and making it feel a little decadent with those giant sized popcorns
Sure.
and huge candies. Depending upon where you go, there's sort of like the king size candy bars and treats.
Well, and we touch on that a little bit in the book too, about the evolution of what you can actually get at the concession stand or counter.
Yes.
What started off with just popcorn and a drink, evolved into now you can get, food, meals that are prepared and either brought to your, you take it with you, brought to your seat or table, which is crazy. It's crazy to think. And now we have bars in theaters,
right.
Full on bars.
I mean, it certainly is an evolution of what is being offered at theaters. And, I was curious. I worked at a movie theater in the late 80s, early 90s. And you remember what it was like back then. I mean, It was fantastic.
It was.
And so I'm just kind of curious. We had a rater. I never met the person, but there was a person who, for that movie company, would go to the locations of the theater that I worked at, and they would audit customer service. And I'm kind of curious to get your opinion on this. Now that there seems to be more of, or a shift towards more of a self-serve approach, like you get your own drinks, or you
like vending. Right.
Yeah, there's somewhat more of a vending style that you do yourself, even like your own slushies and ice cream and different things like that. Do you think customer service is still, specifically at concessions, still a concern even with that style of self-service?
I think it is. I think it is. I don't see a time when it's, and we're seeing this in fast food, right? Fast food is opting more towards a vending style or robotic help as opposed to human help. There's many factors that go into that, and we don't need to bring those up here. But you can see that shift in the theaters as well, with the Coca-Cola vending machine with like 30 or 40 different flavors, and you can just press the buttons and make your own. So they have that. So I do see that shift happening in certain places. But there's customer service aspect, I think, for movie theaters is an extra bonus, whether that means that it's just more specific to making sure everything's clean, making sure that you get your food if you need it delivered, or your concessions if you need them delivered, making sure everything is is clean and proper and right in these theaters, which may mean that their staffing, it does shrink a little bit.
Right.
Movie theaters are kind of notoriously understaffed anyways. But yeah, I don't see it going completely non-human, where you just where it's basically like a what do they call those? Like
an automat.
Like an automat. That's where. Thank you, automat. Yeah, I don't think it's going to go completely automat. You still need the human presence there, and you need some good customer service. And luckily, I've had very good customer service at the theaters near me. So I've been very lucky.
Well, that's very interesting. And so my next question for you is, are promotions in theaters something you think modern moviegoers might enjoy with the rise in certain types of figures and collectibles that we've been seeing nowadays?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. But off the top of my head, no. And here's why. I don't think collectors are the majority of the movie-going audience. I believe your average movie-going audience are regular, just regular. It's like we talk about this on our shows too,
right?
About you know,
North
we're so into this stuff, right? It's such a part of kind of, you know, we wake up and we read the entertainment news. We follow we wait for these trailers to drop.
Yes.
You know, we pre-order hot toys.
Yes.
I mean, this
they don't come out for another year and a half.
Right. But these fandoms, you know, when you put it in perspective, like people that understand the comics, you know, those are about 6 to 10% of the movie going audience at best, best at 10, right? So that's 90% of your average movie going audience doesn't know and frankly doesn't care. So I don't know. I think those cross promotional things can happen in certain places and on certain IP and certain franchises. So I do think that's an interesting take. But alternatively, I do think so that there's arcades in certain theaters, right?
Right.
So you have arcades. Now I could see where there's a partnership that happens with like a movie theater and a collectibles shop. Maybe it's like a comic book shop that has collectibles and toys. That kind of partnership I can see happening, but I don't think that it would be in the theater's best interest just to do it on their own.
Yeah, and this was something that I think a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of, let's say, people who are like us, meaning the 10% who are watching those trailers drop and you know, ordering these items. A lot of people have said things, you know, especially when sort of like blockbuster films like Aquaman came out, and it said, you know, why didn't they offer the comic book at the movie theater when people were buying tickets like crazy to go see the film? And it was a question I think all of us are wondering, you know, where is that coordination and that promotion? But it's something to think about. And sometimes, a lot of times, the promotions are also more concessions, Sam.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that the more they offer, I think a lot of people will look at it and say, well, you know, I've got a variety of choices to make, and I should think very carefully. You know,
I think, and I could be wrong, so correct me in the comment section below if I am, but I do think that there were digital copies of the comic books available, both DC movies and Marvel movies. So it wasn't a physical copy, but I do think they had corresponding digital copies either for free when you bought your ticket or at a severely discounted rate, like 99 cents.
Right, like a Cosmology or something like that.
Right.
So, but it is interesting, you know, what you're mentioning. And, you know, I just was curious as to whether that would draw in people, because some people do want, you know, a hard copy, so to speak. But
sure.
And so I have this is a kind of like a technical question, and I'm sure you remember this when I say but let's say when you and I worked in the theater back in the day, I noticed, I was a cashier, so I didn't work at the concession stand, but I, you know, I got back there sometimes, you know, like they would say, we need help. I'm like, yeah, I'll go back there. And I noticed that at the time, and you do talk about this, and I really love that you talked about, you know, the types of foodstuffs that were used to make popcorn and you know, what, you know, flavorings and things like that. So when you and I were working in the movie theater, and I'm guessing maybe at the movie theater you worked at too, they were using peanut oil to pop popcorn. Okay, so I did just want to get a confirmation on that.
So, and to my knowledge, it's
5-gallon vats, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's not butter. Everybody thinks it's butter, and it's not.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And we go over that in the book. We talk about the evolution there, because it was a bit of an evolution. They actually started with coconut oil.
Yes,
they started with that was the very first oil they used to pop popcorn in the theater. They used coconut oil for a long time, and then some people were using peanut oil. Peanut oil became the dominant and most used oil to pop popcorn, and I think to this day it's still peanut oil.
Okay, I figured it had to be, especially since it's such an inexpensive oil here in the United States.
Super,
But I had to ask that question because I remember those 5 gallon. You remember them? There was like 5-gallon jars of the peanut oil that would come in. What would happen is, it would be very busy on like a Saturday or Friday night, and they'd have to constantly make popcorn. And they would say, "Oh, can you just make us do the popcorn because we're working in the concessions, but can you just go ahead and pop the popcorn?" And I'm like, "Okay, how do I do it?" And they're like, "Open that 5-gallon vat."
Right.
Scoop some out.
I was an usher, so I started as an usher. I worked at concession stand. Obviously, you kind of wear many hats, and this wasn't a chain. This was just a local theater. So I did that, and I used to have to stock too. So
So you've also done the and I'm sorry to cut you off. You've also done the soda machines. And those things were heavy. Those I don't know what they were, but
big old boxes of syrup.
Yes,
back in the day. It's a bag in a box.
Oh my goodness. So obviously, because it's a concession stand book, but you also talk about cultural significance and so much more in the book. Obviously, as we mentioned in the last question, but going forward, popcorn is a very important element, maybe one of the most identifiable concessions in a movie, right? So, but the thing that I love about popcorn, and I think a lot of people who like it, is, as far as I'm concerned, it's more than just a snack, because it's a valid food, and you if you're hungry, you can just actually eat popcorn, and it's not a bad food at all. So I'm kind of curious, other than the fact that it's fantastic and smells great and tastes great, and you can have it made so many ways. Do you think that a lot of times people or moviegoers opt for popcorn more than other treats because it is actually a real food, so to speak?
I do, and you can get full, right?
Yeah,
you can get full on it. So yes, I do think they do that. And like you said, it's it's a substantive food item. Unlike you just, and I think people feel it's a more healthy choice, even though you're basically it's just delivering butter to your face, and that's no good, but it's yummy,
right?
It's amazing, but it's not good for you. It is amazing. But I think people feel that's a healthier choice than just eating, either ice cream in the bonbon or candy, and licorice and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you did mention something about this before, but I did just have to mention it because, we're talking about, let's all go to the lobby, and the history of foods and concession stands, your new book. I thought about my favorite movie snacks, and I know that you said hot dogs aren't that popular perhaps in the movie house. They're more ballpark, but I love hot dogs. So my two favorite snacks at the concession stand at the movies, if they have them, are hot dogs and raisinets. So I wanted to know, what are some of your favorites? Okay, so raisinets I love. It's about the only candy I'll buy at the concession stand at the theater. But my go-to is, and this might be a surprise to people, the pretzel bites. Oh, I love pretzel bites. Oh, so I always get them. So I don't always get popcorn, but usually I'll get pretzel bites, a small popcorn, and then like a water. I don't drink soda, so it'll be like a water. If they have some kind of good tea, like an iced tea in a bottle or a can, I'll grab that. But usually it's a pretzel bites for me. Dunk them in that Cheese Whiz goo that they have. Yeah, great. Sometimes I have that with mustard too. Like pretzels are fantastic either way. And if you're hungry, you might be like, maybe I should get the pretzel right now because I'm kind of craving a pretzel right now, actually. I love to go to the movies in the daytime, usually matinee, usually the first showing, either Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I like having the theater mostly to myself. I usually go alone. The only time I really don't go alone to the movies, obviously, if it's a date night, or if or if we're going in a big group to like the premiere, like the Thursday night first showing when in the crowded house. But yeah, so
since I do that, usually that pretzel bites and the popcorn is my lunch for the day. So I kind of plan it that way.
That is very smart. And I'm so glad you mentioned the idea of sort of like planning your meal or planning your treats before you get to the theater, because you do kind of give advice. I don't want to give too much away, but you do kind of, this book isn't just, sort of like a factoid. It's also sort of like a guide, I feel, to,
a little bit.
Figuring out, like how you're going to plan out your movie experience. And you suggest even before that, that you have to, think about, just like what you said, maybe I know later I'm going to be going to the movies. Maybe I'll have something for lunch that's not as heavy or, something like that. And I thought that that was very clever to do that for a lot of moviegoers who might kind of like feel or forget that they have something planned that night to go to the movies. And it's an excellent suggestion, but I have to say that I have to confess to having brought donuts into a movie. And so I was just curious, like obviously people do sneak food in sometimes.
Yeah. Actually, you don't have to sneak food into a theater. It isn't a welcome. You're not going to get a bunch of high fives if you walk in with
they're not
a bag of McDonald's hamburgers or something like that, or French fries, and that if somebody brings McDonald's French fries or any French fries into the theater, it really I love French fries. Oh, wow. So and if I can smell them, it really gets my taste buds going. So I do like that. But yeah, usually you can bring in food, your own food, to a movie theater. Like I said, you'll get a little side eye probably from the staff, but because they want you. Obviously, that's where they make their money. They want you to buy their food, their concessions. But it can be done. Have I snuck anything into the movies? Absolutely have. And every time it's been alcohol. It was alcohol when I was a kid. It's funny because I absolutely don't do it now, and I don't even use the bar that much. I find that a 2.5 hour movie, I don't want to get up to go get another drink.
Right.
So it's just easier for me not to even start with that, right? Because if I have just one beer, then about halfway through the movie, I start getting tired.
Yeah, me too.
It starts making me sleepy, especially in this dark theater. It doesn't work out for me. So, but yeah, when I was a kid, we used to, a teenager, we used to sneak in beers and bottles in the girlfriend's purse or what, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, that's what we did.
It was good times, and I remember those good times. And kind of talked, obviously continuing our conversation about concessions, and obviously the markup for theater food and other concessions can be a little pricey, and yet many of us, in fact, I would say a good portion of us, still indulge upon it. Yeah. So, is the pull of a treat as strong as the pull to buy a movie ticket?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Absolutely. It's. I think that you used the perfect term for it. It's an indulgence. I don't know about you, and John Campea says this on his show all the time. When he knows he's going to the movies that day, he wakes up in a good mood. Like he's going to we're going to the movies today. It's and so with that anticipation. Then when you get in there, it's like, yeah, I'm going to treat myself. That's why you call them treats, right? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to have the, today I'm going to get the large popcorn, and I'm going to get the Raisinets, and I'm going to get the massive supersized Coke. Why not? Or I'm going to treat myself tonight. I'm going to have, the bacon cheeseburger and fries that they have on the menu, and I'm going to have it delivered to my seat because I'm the king of this movie, right? So yes, I do. It's an indulgence, and it's a good one. Everybody should treat themselves from time to time. I mean, don't overdo it, but yeah, I do. I absolutely believe that.
Now, I have a few more questions. Firstly, you mentioned something about making or possibly making a documentary based on the making of this book. Am I correct?
I did, and it was more of kind of a thinking out loud, but I think it lends itself well to a documentary or some kind of small, even a show, like a smaller show, short. Um, but yeah, I don't really have I don't have the money to do. I don't really have plans to do it. But there are people in this network, the PGS network, the
Yes.
PGS community,
Yes.
that I think, look, listen, if you like the book and want to talk, hit me up on Facebook or wherever, and let's have a discussion, because I think the book would make an awesome documentary.
I agree. And I think that the fact that you shared so many details about how you came up with the concept, and then your planning and execution of how you did the book would be of great interest to very many people. So I think that a lot of people, especially in the PGS, would like to find out a little bit more about your creative processing, could learn quite a bit of useful information. So
and I think there's a lot, there's still more to learn, obviously, about the history of concessions, and to have the chance to go and interview some people that with that knowledge would be fun. I think it would be not only a fun process, but be interesting, to see the final product.
Absolutely. And I have my final question before I ask you if there's anything else you want to let everyone know. You mentioned something very important, and I felt that this is very important. And of course, through the years, we've, you and I were at theaters when they still had, I guess, they had the reels and the platters.
Yeah.
For the film, and then of course everything went to digital. But you bring up some very interesting points about this reel that we talked about, which is the title of your movie, Let's All Go to the Lobby. And you talk about preservation. And, I think it's wonderful that, someone or let's say the Library of Congress felt the need to preserve this for cultural significance, because
Yes.
It is culturally significant. And so with that being said, I completely believe every time I go to the movies that I still might see that trailer. So, why do you suppose, we or other people who share that feeling look for the trailer, that particular trailer, when we go to the movies even today?
It's all has to do with the jingle. That jingle has stuck in our heads our whole lives. It was made in a time when, the experts of jingle writing were writing jingles at that time. So I think I do love the fact that that's preserved in the Library of Congress, because it needs to be. It's iconic. It's something that's as integral to the movie going experience as any movie theater, any movie ever made, or any organization about movies. So it should be recognized and preserved for posterity. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. And Steve, before
Yes.
we end this PGS review, is there anything that you would like the guests who are watching right now to know?
Well, yeah, we almost touched on this, but I do give in the book, I do give some healthy options and ways to eat healthy, maybe before you go into the theater.
Yes.
So I think there's some information there too. I think you'll like the book. Like I said, it's a pretty brisk read. It's not very long, but there's a lot of cool information, and there's some popcorn history. There's some battles that go on in the book. So I think you'll really enjoy it. And yeah, I'm proud of it. It's my first self-published book, and I'm doing my best to get people's to check it out. And like I said, I'm pretty proud of how it came out, and I'm glad that people are liking it. I'm glad you liked it.
It was wonderful. Awesome. It was a wonderful book. And so everybody who's watching, Steve Foley's new book is called Let's All Go to the Lobby, A Sweet History of Concessions at the Movies. So please go to Amazon and get your copy there. And thank you so much, Steve, for joining us, and for everybody watching. And everybody, please be kind.